Good afternoon. My name is Jason Landau Goodman, and I am the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Youth Congress. We are here today as Pennsylvanians from all parts of the Commonwealth to call on our General Assembly and the Governor to finally pass LGBT Nondiscrimination protections. We are also here to formally announce the launch of Pennsylvania Values, our public support campaign to back this urgent effort. Thank you to everyone who has come out this afternoon. We especially appreciate Senator Cameron Bartolotta of Washington County, Representative Wendy Thomas of Bucks County, Bishop Jeremiah Park, our powerful speakers, and all of you for participating. We thank our many allies up here today, including from the Anti-Defamation League to the Adams County Chamber of Commerce, and our faith leaders from Episcopal, Methodist, Lutheran, and Quaker communities, and more. Dignity and respect should never depend on who you are or who you love, or what zip code you live in. But in Pennsylvania, it does. LGBT nondiscrimination legislation will update the Pennsylvania Human Relations Act to protect LGBT people from discrimination in housing, employment, and public accommodations. It will add sexual orientation and gender identity to the existing list of protected classes such as race, religion, sex, disability, to ensure LGBT Pennsylvanians are treated equally under the law just like everyone else. The first non-discrimination bill introduced this session is SB 224 by Senator Pat Brown and is now in the Senate Labor and Industry Committee. We are tremendously grateful to Senator Bartolotta for her longtime, steadfast commitment to her district and to our communities in fighting for this legislation. We greatly look forward to hearing her remarks shortly. Senator Brown is currently our longest-serving legislative ally to LGBT Pennsylvanians, and we could not be more appreciative for his support over the past 25 years. He has done more than earn our respect, and for all he has done and continues to do for LGBT Pennsylvanians. We've always valued equal opportunity here in PA. Our state constitution literally begins by enshrining the declaration that all men are born equally free. But that is not the reality for many of us. LGBT Pennsylvanians can be fired from their jobs, denied housing, or refused service at restaurants or doctor's offices, and it's absolutely time to change that. We want everyone to have an equal opportunity to work, live, learn, and raise a family. Anchoring these protections under the law will provide clarity that LGBT people have equal opportunities just like everyone else. This is good for business, to recruit and retain strong talent, and essential for our communities so that all can thrive. There are over 500,000 LGBT Pennsylvanians throughout the Commonwealth. We are in every county and every community. Working with LGBT Pennsylvanians for the past 10 years now, I have met so many incredible people who inspire me with their courage and resilience, and many of them are here today. They stand in the face of cruel violence and discrimination, which is regular and expected for far too many of us. We will continue to fight for a better Pennsylvania. As our statewide LGBT youth organization, the calls we get at the Pennsylvania Youth Congress are heartbreaking. We have countless stories. LGBT Pennsylvanians who are outright fired, evicted from their homes, assaulted in our schools with impunity. We often remark how we can get married on a Sunday, but then fired on a Monday. These situations can sometimes result in experiences with homelessness, extreme poverty, loss of essential health care. These are compounded by racism and ableism and more. We know that 40% of homeless youth are LGBT. The consequences are dire. The consequences of not having this law for our most vulnerable is life and death. Full stop. In return, we are losing so much bright talent here in PA. Young LGBT people are fleeing our Commonwealth because they don't feel safe, and they are right to do so. Discrimination hurts our communities, economies, and democracy. When some can't participate in public life, we all suffer. Our best employees can't work, our smartest students leave, customers don't spend their money, visitors avoid destinations, and families are torn apart. I'm upset that in 2020, we still have to be here on something so simple. The first bill on this issue was introduced in 1976, going on 50 years. It could take a while to get legislation passed in this building, but this is unimaginable. For the past 9 legislative sessions, bills have been introduced by Representatives Ross and Frankel, now Senator Killian and Senator Farnese. There are so many lawmakers who we are extremely grateful to who have made this legislation a priority, but we are still here. As a newly barred attorney graduating from the University of Pittsburgh School of Law, I do want to speak on the upcoming decisions from the United States Supreme Court. Last fall, the U.S. Supreme Court heard arguments regarding 3 LGBT employment cases that will determine whether federal law continues to protect LGBT people from being fired simply for who they are, or if these protections will be stripped away. This monumental decision could come at any time. We hope the U.S. Supreme Court makes a decision that protects LGBT Americans. However the court rules, this does not mean that explicit protections under state and local law will be directly impacted and remain necessary to enact regardless. We have the power today in Pennsylvania to fix this and save lives. We are launching Pennsylvania Values today to showcase the extensive and enthusiastic support for this urgently needed legislation. Pennsylvania Values has assembled the largest and most diverse coalition of businesses, organizations, faith leaders, educational institutions, and more to back this legislation. Supporters range from companies like Alcoa and Giant Eagle to Hershey, nearly 40 colleges and universities, including Pitt, Penn State, and Penn, numerous leading civic organizations like the NAACP of Pennsylvania and the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Rape, over 30 regional chambers of commerce, including chambers from Pike County, Adams County, and Lycoming County. Pennsylvania Values is about rural and small-town Pennsylvania, just as it is about suburban and urban communities. We will continue to grow this powerful movement in every part of our state, because at the end of the day, this is an issue that transcends county or political party. This is an issue that is bringing us together. We look to institutions like Sheetz and Wawa, the Eagles and Steelers, PPL and West Penn, to all come forward and support publicly LGBT inclusion. We need all hands on deck as we continue to put our hands to the plow on this legislation. We encourage everyone interested in getting involved to visit pavalues.org, again that's pavalues.org, for more information. There you can review an updated list of our supporters, watch stories directly from LGBT Pennsylvanians and our allies, and contact your legislators. All Pennsylvanians should be able to live, work, and access basic services free from discrimination. We can no longer continue as the only state in the Northeast without these basic protections for LGBT people. The reality and fear of discrimination affects LGBT Pennsylvanians every single day. Passing this bill is the right thing to do for our state and ultimately our country. Far too many LGBT Pennsylvanians are suffering because we lack these protections. To the General Assembly, the time is now. Backed by a robust, unprecedented coalition, along with passionate lawmakers, together with the leadership of Senator Brown and Senator Bartolotta and others, we will ensure that dignity for all is recognized as a true Pennsylvania value. We will fight with everything we have to pass this legislation, to finally realize what our Constitution guarantees, that we are all born equally free. The group you'll hear from today includes LGBT Pennsylvanians and their loved ones, including those who have seen firsthand the impact of discrimination, as well as allies and leaders across our state who share why these protections are so critically important. Following the remarks from our speakers, we will open up the floor for questions. Thank you all for joining us today. Our first speaker is someone I am immensely proud to introduce, Senator Cameron Bartolotta from Southwestern PA. She has been a true ally for us, and we are so appreciative for her joining us today. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you so much. It's so nice to see everybody here. A lot of people got up really early to come all the way out here. I'm very grateful, very grateful. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to speak to you today to discuss legislation that would amend the Pennsylvania Human Rights Relations Act and prohibit discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. The Pennsylvania Human Relations Act prohibits discrimination in employment, housing, and public accommodations against certain protected classes. While I certainly agree that discrimination should not ever occur in any of those venues, or more plainly, that discrimination should not occur against any individual in our society, I would like to focus my comments specifically on employment discrimination. As chair of the Senate Labor and Industry Committee, I take very seriously the need to have the best workforce possible to grow our economy and create opportunity. As such, I believe that every individual should be free to seek unfettered personal economic enrichment. Leaving talented individuals on the sideline because of one's sexual orientation or gender identity is surely to fail Pennsylvania. I firmly believe that most Pennsylvania employers do seek to hire the best, most qualified individuals. It's in their best interest. It's good for their bottom line. It's in all of our best interests. Unfortunately, there are always exceptions to that rule. Employers should not be permitted to hire, fire, or otherwise discriminate against individuals based on sexual orientation or gender identity. Additionally, the lack of these protections in state law against the discrimination of individuals expressly may dissuade individuals from even seeking employment in Pennsylvania in the first place. And we can't be losing talented, hardworking, educated, experienced individuals. Pennsylvania has gotten really good at turning people away, at putting up a sign on our borders, nothing to see here, folks, move along. We have left literally billions of dollars in capital investment on the table because industry, manufacturing, organizations who want to come to Pennsylvania and invest their hard-earned dollars and create a wonderful economy see Pennsylvania prohibiting that with our unpredictability in regulations, in permitting, in taxes, in unemployment, in everything. We have got to stop turning away good, qualified, hardworking people. We want them to stay in Pennsylvania. We want them in our communities. We want them in our workplace. We want them in our churches. We want them in our neighborhoods. And we have people wanting to do that without being discriminated against. Folks, this is Pennsylvania. We've been here longer than anybody else. It's time that we changed some of those antiquated, ancient rules and thought processes and brought Pennsylvania into 2020. It is about damn time. I'm very proud of you. I'm very proud of all of you, and I look forward to getting this legislation through the Senate to the House and on the desk. It's about time.
Thank you, Senator Bartolotta. It's through her leadership and that of so many of our senator allies that we are going to get through committee, your committee, and onto the Senate floor as soon as we can, right? Our next speaker from the House is Representative Wendy Thomas from Bucks County. We have been tremendously appreciative of her leadership in the House since she took office last year. Thank you so much for representing your House colleagues here today. Wendy Thomas.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Jason, and all of you for having me here today. And I couldn't agree with Senator Bartolotta's comments more. In fact, when I sat down to see what I was going to say today, I said, what year is it? What year can it possibly be that I'm having to go and speak about this topic? Yes, folks, it's 2020. We are 20 years into the 21st century. We are past the time when we should allow our fellow Pennsylvanians to be treated like second-class citizens for their gender identity or their sexual orientation. This bill needs to pass now. Here we are, having to talk about fairness to our fellow human beings. It really saddens and shocks me. You might be thinking, this discrimination doesn't happen anymore. good, upstanding Pennsylvanians are not fired from their jobs or denied housing because they're gay. That doesn't happen in 2020. I spent a 30-year career in healthcare. I myself was a manager and was responsible for hiring and firing. I never saw nor even thought about not hiring someone or firing someone over their sexual orientation. Additionally, knowing I was coming here today, I began to speak to business owners in my home community. I said, "Do you think it's against the law in Pennsylvania to fire someone?" They said, "Yes, I think it is." And they said, "I would only fire someone for job performance." So while many of us think that, you are going to hear from people who that's not their life experience. Living in fear of being fired over putting a picture of your spouse on your desk, we will hear from people who've had this experience, and this should not be happening in Pennsylvania. Despite the many advances into the American mainstream, LGBT people continue to face real discrimination. Did you know that in 1975, Pennsylvania was the first state in which an executive order was issued providing for discrimination protection based on sexual orientation in state employment? 1975. In 2003, gender identity was added to this executive order. That executive order in state employment has been reissued by every governor, Republican and Democrat, since. We were leading the way. Now we're behind. For more than 10 years, legislation that would protect LGBT community from discrimination in Pennsylvania based on sexual orientation or gender identity has awaited action by the Pennsylvania General Assembly. I appreciate the senators' movement in the Senate, and I will do everything I can in the House to help this bill get on the desk for signatures. It's the only way to make our laws fair for all who live within our Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative Thomas. We are going to get through the House as well because of your leadership and that of all your colleagues. Thank you. Faith communities are central to this issue and our movement forward. They are a strength for so many of us in advancing these critical protections. So I would like to introduce our next speaker, who is Methodist Bishop Jeremiah Park, for his remarks and speaking on behalf of all of the Methodist bishops of Pennsylvania.
Greetings in the name of Jesus Christ, Prince of Peace, healer of our brokenness, and hope of the world. My name is Jeremiah Park. I am the resident bishop of the Harrisburg area, serving Susquehanna Conference of the United Methodist Church. The conference covers the central and northeastern part of state of Pennsylvania. In 2015, the three bishops of the United Methodist Church serving in Pennsylvania, leading conferences containing approximately 2,000 churches, made a statement urging our state leaders to pass the Pennsylvania Nondiscrimination Act to protect full equality of LGBT people under the law. 5 years later, I stand here on behalf of Bishop Peggy Johnson of the Eastern Conference, Pennsylvania Conference, and Bishop Cynthia Moore Cocoy of the Western Pennsylvania Conference to publicly share essentially the same statement, reiterating our call to our state leaders. Let me read parts of our statement from January 13, 2020. As bishops of the United Methodist Church in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we urge our state legislators to pass Senate Bill 224. It calls our state to prohibit discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity in housing, employment, and public accommodations. Pennsylvania remains the only state in the Northeast without these important protections. We believe that when all people are protected from discrimination, our entire community is strengthened with respect and mutual regard. The United Methodist social principles state the following, I quote, "We support the basic rights of all persons to equal access to housing, education, communication, employment, medical care, legal redress for grievances, and physical protections. We deplore acts of hate or violence against groups of persons based on race, color, national origin, ethnicity, age, gender, disability, status, economic condition, sexual orientation, gender identity, or religious affiliations. Certain basic human rights and civil liberties are due all persons," end quote. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is often known as the cradle of religious liberty. When William Penn is quoted as saying, "We must give the liberty we seek," it was here that religious freedom became a valued principle for American life as we learned to tolerate differences. Religious freedom means we have the right to our own personal beliefs about the moral issues related to sexual orientation or gender identity. It has never been the case that religious freedom has meant that we can restrict another person's liberty to live as equals in our communities. We call upon our lawmakers to recognize and stop the unjust suffering experienced by our LGBT brothers and sisters and act to protect all from harm by passing this bill. It is long overdue and greatly needed at this time, filled with polarization and violence. Let me end by quoting two phrases from the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. that speak to the reasons we stand here today, lending our voices to this cause. We are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied into a single garment of destiny. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bishop Hart, for your powerful words. I would also like to thank a couple representatives we have here today from various denominations. We have Pastor Joel Folkheimer. Will you raise your hand? He is here to present a letter today from all of the Lutheran bishops of Pennsylvania. We also have the Reverend Shana Watson, who has a letter signed by all the Episcopal bishops of Pennsylvania. We also have Betsy Torg here today representing the Friends Council on Education. Thank you all so much for your support. Next, I would like to invite up Michael Bugby. He's a college student at Shippensburg University of Pennsylvania, and he's here to share his story. Michael? Right behind you. There you go.
You're going to have to find another place to live. I didn't know you were a homosexual. These words still echo in my mind today. Hi, my name is Michael Bugby, and I'm here to speak with you today about how discrimination based on my sexual orientation almost left me without a place to live, and why this is a critical issue our leaders here in Pennsylvania and nationally need to tackle. I'm a 27-year-old gay man who has muscular dystrophy. I live and go to school in a small college town called Shippensburg. It's where my husband and I met and fell in love. Last year, after deciding to go back to school, my husband and I decided to try to find a house close to campus. However, doing so ended up being harder than we thought. The first house we found was very close to campus. However, upon setting up a time to fill out an application and see the place, the owner quickly found out that I was married to a man. He apologized, but stated he couldn't even show me the place, let alone rent to me, stating that my lifestyle compromised his morals and values. After that initial shock, I contacted the borough in which this took place. I quickly found out that there are no laws protecting us from housing discrimination. Upon finding another potential house, we decided it was best not to share our marital status at first. We used the old saying, "Oh, He's just my roommate, which I'm sure a few of you are familiar with. I felt like I was betraying myself, my husband, and all those who fought for LGBT equality. Yet this tactic still left us vulnerable. Not even a week after we moved in, the landlord found out about our marriage. He willfully argued that he could no longer rent to us nor keep the terms of the lease. He told us we would need to find another place to live. That day shook me to my core. I was in disbelief. I couldn't believe that this was happening. I couldn't believe that in 2019, LGBTQ people could be denied a place to live just because of who we are. In my case, thankfully, however, it did work out. The landlord came back that same day, stating he would honor the lease for now, but he would pray for me and hope in time that I would change my sinful ways. I survived both of these occurrences. I'm still standing, I'm still me, and I'm still happily married and in love with that man right over there. However, these two situations should not have been legally allowed to happen. No one should be denied housing or a job or any other service just because of their sexual orientation, just because of who they love. Our lawmakers here in Pennsylvania and the justices on the Supreme Court need to take action to ensure what happened to me doesn't happen to anyone again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael, for sharing your story. He is not alone. Next, I would like to invite Melissa DiStefano up. She's a mom from Montgomery County. Melissa?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Melissa DiStefano. I'm a proud mom, I'm a Christian, and I'm a public school teacher in the state of Pennsylvania working with special needs students. I'm honored to speak on behalf of parents who have transgender children throughout the state of Pennsylvania. We call ourselves parent warriors, and our mission is to create change to protect our children. We will not stop until our children are safe from discrimination and violence. Passage of this legislation we are calling for today is essential to the future of our children's lives. When my son Aiden told me he was transgender, I Googled my mind into oblivion. I read about families that kicked their children out of the house and disowned them. I read about schools that refused to use a child's chosen name and their preferred pronouns. I learned that transgender kids have a sky-high suicide rate. I was terrified. I realized that my actions could mean the difference between a dead daughter or a living son. When Aiden came out publicly as transgender with a video posted online in 2015, I posted my own letter alongside his video. Aiden and I were thrilled to see that people were supportive. Every step that Aiden took towards his transition, he seemed lighter and happier. Even so, it's not been an easy path. He has faced discrimination in our church, in his school, and in a courtroom when we filed for his legal name change. Thankfully, with the help of the ACLU, Aiden's name change was granted 9 months after that county judge denied it. I am incredibly proud of how far Aiden has come in his life already and of the young man that he is today. He's working full-time now. As he grows in his career, I want him to have the same opportunities as everyone else. I want him to be able to keep the job he loves, work hard, and provide for his family. I want him to be able to find housing and get medical attention without concern that he may be denied because he is a transgender individual. In October, the United States Supreme Court began considering 3 cases about the employment discrimination that so many lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender Americans face each year. A ruling could come at any time. Personally, I watched my son take the stand in a courtroom and defend his authenticity in the Doe versus Boyertown lawsuit. I believe laws need to be in place to protect LGBTQ people so they don't have to defend who they know themselves to be in a court of law. It's critical that the justices affirm once and for all that federal law protects LGBTQ people from employment discrimination to help ensure that people like my son aren't blocked in the workforce. Housing and medical attention are equally important. No one should ever be denied employment, housing, or medical attention due to their sexual orientation or gender identity. This is important for all people in our country, but especially in the state of Pennsylvania, where there aren't explicit state-level laws prohibiting discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity. So even after the Supreme Court ruling comes down, regardless of how the court rules, we all must continue pushing forward at the local and state level here in Pennsylvania. We need to join our neighboring states and show LGBTQ people that they are valued. Dignity and respect should never depend on what zip code you call home, and no one deserves to be kept at a disadvantage because of who they are or who they love. I won't stop speaking out until we all have full equality under the law. I hope that all lawmakers in our state, including my representatives, State Senator Bob Mensch and Representative Marcy Topol, will support the swift passage of LGBT non-discrimination legislation such as SB 224. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Next, I would like to introduce Maggie Nealon, who is the president of St. Joe's University's Pride Group.
Good afternoon. My name is Maggie Nealon, and I'm the president of SJU Pride at St. Joseph's University. I'm also a student, a future lawyer, and a very proud member of the LGBTQ community. Today, I'm here with other members of Pride's executive board to call on lawmakers to pass Senate Bill 224 and protect LGBTQ Pennsylvanians from discrimination in employment, housing, and other public places. To give you a bit of background on myself, I come from Scranton, Pennsylvania, a city with a strong, well-established Catholic faith community. Catholicism was at the center of everything I did in my young life. I went to church every Sunday, I attended only Catholic schools, and I taught music classes at Bible camp in the summer. However, when I started to recognize my sexual orientation, I soon had to realize, with much sorrow, that many in my own church believed these two parts of my life could not coexist. I'm still reconciling with that realization to this very day, where the faith I grew up with could be used as an excuse to not hire someone like me or to deny me housing. This isn't to say that I reject the freedom of religion. I believe in religious liberty for all, but I also stand for the rights of the members of my community and the protection that we all deserve. There are thousands of LGBTQ Catholics throughout the state of Pennsylvania. Our families, our friends, and our communities firmly support this legislation and the rights it protects. We call on the General Assembly to pass these protections because of our faith, not in spite of it. Nearly all of us here from St. Joseph's today are seniors, including myself, so we will soon be entering the workforce and be searching for new housing. While this transition period would normally be considered a time of anticipation and excitement, I've also come to view it with a bit of dread. Ideally, after graduation, I would stay in my home state of Pennsylvania and be able to develop my law career in the state that I know and love. Yet knowing that Pennsylvania currently does not have protections against discrimination for LGBTQ people like me, I often find myself thinking about moving to a state where I know my rights would be protected. If I stay in Pennsylvania, could I be dismissed from an interview for a legal internship the moment I choose to disclose my identity? Could I be asked to leave my apartment building when my landlord discovers that I'm dating a woman? Perhaps these scenarios sound far-fetched in 2020, but as you've heard from many here today, these are the unfortunate and unsettling realities for far too many members of our community. I love my home state, and I'm proud of where I come from. But I'm certain that I would love it even more if protection against discrimination was guaranteed for the hundreds of thousands of people in the LGBTQ community living in Pennsylvania, myself included. What's more, we need to ensure that LGBTQ people across the country are protected from discrimination in all areas of their lives, and that no one needs to fear their rights won't be protected when they move from state to state, regardless of what the U.S. Supreme Court decides in the pending case on employment discrimination. That's why we're here today, to call on our lawmakers here and in Congress to pass express and enduring protections for LGBTQ people in all areas of life. I'm hopeful for a future where we will be able to live in the great state of Pennsylvania, feeling assured, affirmed, and respected above all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maggie, and thank you to all the Catholic LGBT students across the state who are here with us today. I'd now like to introduce our final speaker, Ben Eaton. He is representing the Greater Wilkes-Barre Chamber of Commerce. Our business communities are absolutely central to this conversation and are leading it in every part of the state. So, Ben?
Hi, my name is Ben Eaton. I identify as bisexual, reside in northeastern Pennsylvania, and happen to work for a Chamber of Commerce, the Greater Wilkes-Barre Chamber of Commerce, for about 5 years now. I came out when I was 22 and was fortunate to work for an organization that celebrated and supported LGBTQ protections within the workplace. It has never been a question for me to bring my partner to a work function, nor have I ever had to hide my sexuality from my bosses and coworkers. I watched as the city of Wilkes-Barre in 2016 joined the two other cities in my area, Pittston and Scranton, in adding protections based on sexual orientation and gender identity and expression to the local ordinances. Unfortunately, many towns in my area do not offer these protections, and in fact, 2/3 of Pennsylvanians are currently not covered under LGBTQ protections in the workplace or public accommodations. For many, this means they could be married on the weekend and lose their job on Monday. When the business pledged for Chambers of Commerce to support non-discrimination protections for LGBT employees came across our desk in Wilkes-Barre, it was a no-brainer for us to sign on. We had just passed a strategic plan in which advocacy and diversity are key pillars of the plan. After being reviewed by our Government Affairs Committee and our Board of Directors, they voted unanimously to support the pledge. We realized that by continuing to move forward, we have to be an area that shows we are welcoming to all Pennsylvanians, future and current, to live, work, and play. Legislators, today I'm asking for your support as a Pennsylvanian, an LGBTQ individual, and as an individual representing a part of the business community in northeastern Pennsylvania on SB 224. As LGBT employment protections are being debated on the national stage through a trio of Supreme Court cases, it is now more important than ever for Pennsylvania to stand with the growing number of states that provide LGBT protections in employment and public accommodations. I want to thank you for your time here today and encourage you again to vote yes on SB 224. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ben. Thank you so much again to all of our speakers for sharing their stories. There are so many experiences out there that show why this legislation is compelling, and we must continue to urge our lawmakers to take action. But it will be through Senator Bartolotta leading her committee, Representative Thomas, and so many of our allies making this a priority at the top of the ticket for the General Assembly for the rest of this year. The time is now. It is 2020, and through everyone here and more, everyone across the state watching, we can do this, and we will. The time is now. So thank you all so much for joining us today. We're happy to field questions. I know our speakers will be available to the press after, as well as Pastor Watson, Pastor Folkemper, and others. So happy to take any questions. Are there any? Yes.
Have you received any indication beyond Senator Bartolotta and Representative Thomas that the Republican caucuses would be open to moving this legislation?
We have been meeting with members of both parties, but certainly many Republican legislators in the House and the Senate for the past year, and having very productive conversations. So this is part of the conversation about priorities, and we hope that they actually move it. That's why we're here today, to demonstrate that there is overwhelming support across the state from every district in the Commonwealth. Any other questions? Thank you all so much. Have a great afternoon. And let's get this done.